Speaking of OGs, it's my great pleasure to have our first fireside chat with one of the founders of the Bitcoin Foundation, which is where I first got my exposure to Bitcoin in early 2013. He's a legend in the industry for many reasons, and we're going to get into some of that now. Charlie Shrem. Charlie, can you come up here?
Hey, Michael.
Now that you're in the film industry, I'll tell you your spot. Sit right there.
This one?
Okay, so we first met in 2013, and those were heady times for you. You were 21, 22 years old.
Oh, yeah.
And were one of the real pioneers of founding the industry. Tell us what the days of like 5-cent Bitcoin were like.
Those, I wish I had more. I remember when we had started BitInstant, actually, like we all paid ourselves salary in Bitcoin, and I remember very distinctly I was making like 400 Bitcoin a week, which was only like $300. Yeah, I wasn't even paying myself like a six-figure amount. This was the early, because back then you were starting kind of Bitcoin companies, you know, quote unquote, and I mean companies like two people sitting in their mom's basement who throw up like a single-page website. We were starting these businesses to like service the existing industry, which existed just in like a few different chat groups. There were no physical events. Your event was probably one of the first events ever in the history of crypto, and the fact that you're still running and everything is like a testament to how amazing this is, and I hope this continues for decades to come, and this becomes like known as like the, you know, that famous Linux conference that still goes on every year or whatever. But they were amazing times. They were different times. I would say the major difference is that no matter the biggest competitor or the smallest competitor, it was a very even playing field, and everyone agreed that let's grow this Bitcoin pie together before we kind of fight over it. And that was like the biggest thing. And I don't know when that changed. It's not a bad thing to, you know, you need competition, but it was nice to have like at least like a few years of no competition.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think it started changing as early as 2014. I wrote an article for, I think it was Barron's or Venture Beat. I was writing a lot of thought leadership pieces in those days, and I think I called it the Bitcoin Civil War. And it was basically the VCs that were coming in and trying to go and say, we need more regulation. And the OGs were saying, no, we're a new paradigm. You need to get used to us. And so I'd say when like Andreessen Horowitz came in, and they were really early. People forget how early they were. I mean, they were actually, in many ways, the spark behind me creating BitAngels in May of 2013 with David Johnston, because I went to the first Bitcoin Foundation conference, your group's conference, in May of 2013. So 9 years ago. And I noticed that, and I guess that was the first conference of more than maybe 70 or 80 people, because there was one in 2011 that I guess it was so small people took a group picture afterwards. But this was 1,000 people, right? And I remember meeting David, who's now like one of my BFFs, and I've actually got him to move to Puerto Rico even. But he had been in Bitcoin for about a year longer than me, which back then was a big deal, right? Because I remember when we had the first BitAngels. So the reason why I started BitAngels was I noticed that there was an announcement that Coinbase had raised a $5 million round, and the lead was Andreessen Horowitz. I was like, that's a big VC. And then I saw Ripple had raised $2 million from Union Square, and I was like, that's a big VC. Where are the angels? And David said, well, they kind of just are around, but you have to get.
It was Roger Ver. Roger Ver was the only angel. He was the only one investing. You know, I never even understood what the term VC even meant. I still don't, even though I work now I'm a general partner in a VC fund out of Florida, Druid Ventures. I still have a huge amount of imposter syndrome. Like when we're sitting on investment committees and companies are asking us, like, help us fill the holes or the gaps. Are you investable? And people look for me. It's like, I never studied VC or investing. I never studied anything. It was just kind of like learning about Bitcoin, in in my basement or whatever, and I was working for my
Charlie,
cousin.
most of the best VCs
Yeah.
are ones that started as operators. Mark Andreessen is arguably the best VC in the entire world right now. He started out, writing code and created the first web browser as a college student. And then he went out and had $3 billion exits. And then he's like, okay, it's time to be a VC now.
You talk about BitAngels too. It's like the only companies really that were investable back then were like either Coinbase, Ripple, BitInstant, and like BitPay. So I remember when I was sitting with David in like a Panera Bread. So we're not sitting at like Cafe Roma or somewhere really. We're sitting at Panera, and we're got laptops out, and his other partner was there, or whatever. And he said, yeah, we're doing this whole angel group with Michael, and we're going to be investing in the industry. And I'm like, what's an industry? What does that even mean? Who are you investing in? But little did I know, they were tens of thousands of people around the world that were like budding, starting to build things and needed money. And you see all the companies and all the projects today that kind of launched out of BitAngels, and that is the industry.
Yeah. And I think it's a very good point. I mean, I met David just having a beer on the rooftop, and within like 10 minutes we were like, just bonded at the hip because we had very similar visions. And, I asked him, I said, why isn't there an angel group? And he's like, I don't know. Why don't we start one? And I came up with the name BitAngels. He literally on the fly set up the website and said, hey, we're around a bunch of people here. There might be 6 or 7 angels. Let me put a post on Bitcoin Reddit, which was not a very large group, and maybe we'll get 6 or 7 people to show up. We got 30 people to show up at a lunch table the next day, and Roger showed up. I didn't know who he was at the time. I was just asking everybody, how long have you been in Bitcoin? Everybody's like, 2 months, 3 months, and Roger's like 2010. I was like, sorry, And so Roger was there, Vinny Lingham was there, Jared Kenna was there. I know you just had the dinner with him last night, and so some of the real, Chad from Paxos.
Ray or what? No, Chad.
Chad, I can never pronounce his last
name.
Cascaria, yeah. I mix his name up with a Puerto Rican friend of mine. It also has a C in a lot of letters, but at any rate. He was there with Liberty City Ventures, which is a VC, and then funded ItBit, and that became Paxos, and he left, and now he's one of the most successful exchange operators around. So the whole vision in those days was, as you said, go and have people with Bitcoin deploy those Bitcoin into the ecosystem to make wallets, to make exchanges, because otherwise it's never going to grow to the next level that we all believe it can. What was your vision of where Bitcoin could be when you got it in 2012?
I really always thought that it would just be Bitcoin forever. The idea of smart contracts and like building on top of blockchain, that concept didn't exist. The whole idea was to create, for me, when I fell in love with Bitcoin and I really understood it on a very deep level, and I really studied it, every word and read everything and really felt it, and then I met with Roger Ver and Eric Voorhees, who ended up working for me at BitInstant. And actually the perfect quote that I ever heard was, I wasn't into the anarchism, anarcho-capitalist world. Obviously, I believe in freedom and liberty and things like that, but I wasn't about like violence or taking one thing down to bring another thing up. I never really understood how will this Bitcoin thing fit in? And someone told me, Charlie, we're not trying to end the Fed, we're trying to transcend the Fed. And the idea was let's create a better alternative community. And so if you say what's Bitcoin's place in the world, it's the essence. It was the community. All cryptocurrencies, all blockchains, all tokens, all protocols exist today because they get their roots from the ideas and the technology behind Bitcoin. But it's so weird because if I had even had a little bit of a vision, I would have, it would have been very different. I was really just a young kid flying by the seat of my pants. Just here I was. I found something that none of the other kids in Brooklyn were doing. This was just my thing. No one could tell me I'm wrong or give me crap about it. And here are my friends. We're all a bunch of misfits on the internet. And that's all I wanted. That's all I ever cared about, and that's all I ever wanted it to be. And you brought up, the transition with the VCs, and you kind of reminded me about something. There was a big struggle that I had because, so again, I didn't understand how to raise money. So we had this BitInstant idea, and we wanted to make it possible for people to get, Bitcoin as fast as possible. And we had all these deals with like Walmart and Walgreens and CVS. And at one point we were a huge amount of the volume. But my mom gave me basically she loaned me money against the money given to me in my bar mitzvah. So like that was the first seed investment. And then getting the second, getting more money was just Roger over Skype telling me, tell me where to send the Bitcoin. Right. So that wasn't very difficult. I went on like an internet TV show. But then that's when the VCs started entering. And all of a sudden, when BitInstant was growing, you had groups of people who were like the Bitcoin OGs who wanted to continue investing in BitInstant. But then you had traditional VC groups like eventually Cameron and Tyler who ended up investing. But there were others too. They were the existing VCs. And here I was like being pulled in very different directions because at one respect, I wanted to build this system to transcend the world system and make people more free and to enjoy the world on an equal playing field, like kind of the similar things of the French Revolution where, the guy who cleans the trash can be the president. I wanted to see the same thing with Bitcoin. We have this huge amount of inequality in the world. But then you have the traditional VC world who was like, you got to regulate and make money. And obviously, the answer is always in the middle. But when you're
I think that's the difference between angels and professional money managers that are VCs, right? The angel ecosystem, just in general, is 10 times the size of the venture capital industry. It's just harder to track down. In other words, there are millions of angel investors, people who just simply, are looking for a better return than 0.01% on their money. And maybe even a better return than DeFi. And so they're like saying, hey, I'm going to take, Jason Calacanis says, if you're savvy and you want to go and, make better money, take 5% of your capital and invest it into startups and just, you just have to make sure that you know your field and like hang out with other investors who can go and do group due diligence with you. And that's really what BitAngel is all about. And, when you go in, the greatest thing from an entrepreneur's perspective about angel investors is it's typically friendly money, right? It's kind of like just beyond the friends and family. Your friends and family was your bar mitzvah money, right?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you hopped right from the bar mitzvah to the Winklevoss twins, right? And that's when, as soon as you get your first VC dollar, then you have participating preferred rights, you have monthly board meetings.
Handcuffs,
yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was advised, because I advise a lot of companies now as well as invest in them, and I'll advise them, it's like, don't be timid about going out and getting angel money. Make sure it's the right angel money, but wait as long as possible, maybe even never, until you get your first venture money, because that comes with a whole new set of responsibilities, because it's not angels saying, hey, we're going to go and try to help you do this and that. We got 30 companies. We're having fun doing this. We know one or two are going to make our money back. If it's you, great. If it's not, no big deal. As opposed to people who are being paid a paycheck to go and manage $1 billion of somebody else's money. And they get their LP meetings. They're like, what the hell's happened with this company here and this and
they're getting their salary regardless. They're getting their salary regardless of how well they do or how not well they do. And it's a much longer time horizon. VCs, unfortunately, there's a lot of super benefits, but just while we're on this subject, their model is if 1 out of 5 or 10 does well, then they're happy. The other, it's sunk cost or whatever. Angel investing, it's like very, very emotional. So there's that, which can be a disadvantage at the same time. But usually when you're starting something really small and new, I agree. If you can always just take angel investing until you have a product where you could say no. Like if someone offers you and you can negotiate, we all know that the best time to make a deal is when you really don't want the product. It's fun, actually. I look forward to those, it's like, oh, this guy really wants me to buy this, but I don't want it at all, so I'm just going to have fun with it. And it's like you learn a lot about negotiating and people, like how quickly folks will break down their barriers or their walls, and you actually learn how people negotiate. It's a lot of fun to do that. I didn't trust my gut until a few years ago. And now being able to trust your gut on some of these things, let's look
Priceless.
back. If you look back 10 years, we've all had opportunities to invest in products that we love, whether it's Scotch tape or like something, just things that we use. Think what you use on a day-to-day basis. Just invest in those things. I look back, I'm like, I should have invested in that oat milk company. They really I should have invested in this, just even household stuff. all the crypto products and services that I use. And that's why I like what you're doing, because you're saying, I love this company, I love this product. Okay, I'm going to get involved in it because I know that I'm going to use it, or I need this.
Right. Exactly, and so that's one of the big things about angel investing in general, and this industry in particular. When you look at sort of the way that the industry has grown from the early days to today, I would say that even though we're talking about going into a crypto winter, and there was a post on Reddit about Y Combinator is saying it's going to be the worst time ever for raising money. I think for at least people in crypto, this is an amazingly great time to be an entrepreneur. First of all, in between bull markets, you don't have the fluff to compete with.
Yes.
You're actually, the tourists go away, and you're left with you can get great team members without having to be like, well, I just got an offer of they're going to give me $500,000 a year plus 10% of the company. Now they're like, I could use a job,
Valuations go down.
Valuations go down.
Yeah, people are being more honest with you.
But now that's from the investor perspective. But from the entrepreneur perspective, I'll come to companies saying, "Oh, I didn't raise when it was $60,000 Bitcoin. I'm screwed." It's just like, have you raised any equity yet? No, just the token. So the nice thing is that most projects now, unless they're just purely like a platform, and even then you could have your Ethereum, and then you could start your consensus to provide tools for it. Most companies now in this ecosystem can find a way to create value by selling equity, can find a way to get a useful token. If you don't have a useful token, don't do one, but can find a way of getting a useful token to power the ecosystem, and can find some way of getting NFTs into their equity mix to control governance, to be able to have NFT enterprise. There's so many ways you can use NFTs. And if you look at the gaming industry right now, something like, Star Atlas, right? I mean, they ended up going, before they raised a nickel of equity or they raised a nickel of tokens, they sold several $1 million of characters in a game that won't ship for 3 years. And I've never seen something where you have 3 buckets you can sell, and one of them, the NFTs, actually counts as revenue.
Yep. Our mutual friend Brock Pierce says, bear markets are for building, bull markets are bullshit. And it's so true. Every single company, from BitAngels to Coinbase to BitInstant, and every company, you can name me any company right now that's super successful in Bitcoin or crypto, they started during a bear market. And
Ethereum,
it's all been started at a need. I remember the day, when I first found out about Bitcoin, there was this huge run up to $1, and I was so excited, so I bought some, and then it crashed back down to 10 cents. And I was like, all right, now I got to provide some value to the industry, or to the Bitcoin forums or whatever. And so that's when it all started. So these are the times. It's the scariest times, but it's the best times, because at the end of the day, we know this thing is here to stay. We know now it's going to be a multi-decade, 100-year horizon. Version 1.0 will outlast me. No, sorry. I'll be long gone before we can even call crypto 1.0. Well, people will look back 100 years from now. We're so new.
The last Bitcoin, where they have to figure out how to incentivize people after that, doesn't get mined until the year 2140. So unless we have great life extension technologies, none of us will be here in 2140.
Someone asked, I forgot who it was, Scaramucci, what inning are we in with crypto? And he said, we haven't even started spring training yet. It's so beginning. What I like about I ask myself, and I was going to ask you, do you get jaded? How have you been around the industry so long and not kind of got tired a little bit and come back and forth? Like you said, Jared Kenna, we were having dinner. He disappeared for 6 years. Most people aren't around. If I had not had my forced sabbatical, I may not have been around today too. So yeah, it's kind of good to go through all these multi-decades.
Well,
and
I think for me, I still find things exciting about the builders in this industry, and when that stops, I'll look for something else to do. I was very early in the web. I was very early in social media, and both of those industries have become calcified. Right? The web basically got controlled by the stacks. It's all the big, you can't really go and have a new startup in the web very easily unless your first question is how are you going to beat, Google and Yahoo and well, I guess you sell to them, right? And in social media, when I got involved in social media in 2001, I got involved in the web in '93. Those had the same kind of like early day feels of excitement that you did in like early 2013 and before. I can't even imagine what it was like in 2011 when it was $1. But even in 2013, it was just very exciting. And with social media, it went from like all these things you could do organically to everything being, controlled by Facebook ad budgets, right? In less than a decade. And that has not happened to crypto, because every time you try to get somebody controlling,
my wife's industry and in my industry. And so it was always separate. What she does with acting and voiceover and what I do with Bitcoin and crypto was always very two different things. I didn't really understand that industry from any other perspective except from the actor perspective. And what I know from the actor perspective is that it's very impossible to break out and break through. But also I learned that filmmakers, it's almost impossible for them to do anything. And at the end of the day, I always assumed that every script was a good script. It's not true. Most scripts are bad. I'm lucky that I partnered with someone who's a brilliant screenwriter, and so his scripts are all good scripts. But other than that, and I actually met someone who I'm excited to read his script. I think he's here, Shoki, so I'm excited to read his script too. But, so there was this kind of like very big separation in that world. And we met Tom just as a fluke, really, just on Twitter. And yeah, a year later, we just produced 2 movies together, both written by Tom. And we're really excited for the world to see them very, very soon. But in my own personal experiences, putting these projects together, and if you look at some of the best movies of all time, putting those budgets together was like building a Bitcoin startup in 2011. Friends and family, loans, maxing out your credit cards, and then you finally make something good and you beat the odds and you make something good and everything like that, then you have to take any deal that you can, because distribution controls the whole thing. So I saw that as like, wow, here's a huge industry that you can really like shake up and fracture. And then using what I know from crypto and what I learned from Courtney and Tom, I think we can do something really great here with Define. So I'm really excited about that.
So, when I first got into, and I've spent a lot of years in Hollywood, having, started my first agency in Los Angeles, I never wanted to do anything directly for the entertainment industry because I saw how many PR firms there are in the entertainment industry. So I became the tech guy that everybody partnered with when they wanted to do, entertainment plus internet, entertainment plus blockchain, entertainment plus social, and it worked well that way. But when I first got into crypto, I realized that, boy, there's got to be a solution somewhere to this arcane film financing pyramid that blockchain can solve. And now I see there's a number of companies even here who are doing different takes on it. Now yours is really the first one I've seen that's almost like a crypto first, because you're saying, hey, here's DeFi, where most people don't even realize they could be making 10% pretty risk-free on their money from DeFi instead of 0 point whatever. And then between that and film grants and everything else, you can go and have a bucket that you can then be able to go and have your investments tracked and also have additional return that is helping to fund it. So why don't you talk about some of the specifics of how DeFi works?
I mean, you talked exactly that, and when we do the panel, we can get more into it in a little bit. But it's exactly that. I was like,
don't want to steal the thunder too much, but just give the overview.
Everyone is trying to do the same thing with NFTs, and I like all that, and I'm definitely invested in a lot of those platforms and marketplaces. But I wanted to go back to my roots a little bit, and Tom and I and our other partner Sean, we really spent many hours like throwing a lot of other bad ideas away to try to solve this problem. And we really spent a lot of time getting into it. And what we figured out was, okay, you have these very secure assets that make up a film budget. So for example, every state, 99% of countries, actually the only state that doesn't do it is, one of the only states that doesn't do it is Florida. But countries around the world will give you a tax credit if you film in their country or state, and that could be anywhere from 20 to 40%. Most movies put that in their budget. Like that's part. I've not yet seen a budget that doesn't include using the tax credit for part of the budget. Mm-hmm. So if you know you're going to be spending $500,000, you're going to get $200 in 2 years. That $200 is actually part of the money you need to make in order to even finish the film. But not only that. A lot of times if you have, different pieces in place beforehand, you can get different. And I've only been in it 1 year. Tom's had a film distribution company for a very long time and has made 18 movies, and so I'm still learning. But reading all these budgets and being a numbers guy and a math guy and trying to like see the waterfall and how the actors and the producers and the filmmakers make money, because again, film is America's biggest export. A lot of people are making a lot of money here. So I wanted to figure out how to do that. And so we figured out that if we can take those, studios are writing you paper that they'll give you $1 million when you finish it upon delivery. So you have all these people and companies offering you, money when you finish or when you hit certain parts of the way. And then, so I'm wondering, okay, so other than private financiers, where is that money coming from? Well, it's either coming from hedge funds or banks. There are film banks. And I read those contracts, man, they start at 10 to 15% and go up. It is insane. And I'm like, whoa, we can bring this yield to DeFi. What if crypto folks holding our stablecoin that we launch could essentially get that same yield from those same type of secured assets? So we're looking at NFTs in a different way, where we're actually turning a tax credit or the film itself into the NFT, and the stablecoin is then backed by those NFTs in case something were to happen. But then all the filmmakers are paying their interest rate directly on chain, and then it's being dispersed to all the token holders. So all the financial transparency that didn't exist in crypto is gone. And Tom can tell you more about all that stuff, but it's like, you're all the middlemen are gone, and all the vertical integration. You could do so many things. You can potentially fund hundreds, if not thousands, of film projects, and regular people who are holding crypto can have a piece of all of these, or like the interest secure rights, and it could be really cool. And you can have essentially, down the road, you can have people be able to learn how to put together projects to be able to at least get onto the defined protocol so they can get liquidity to move forward on their way. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Great, and I know we've gone over our time, but I'm never going to cut a great interview with Charlie short. But that I think is a good segue, because the next panel is panel with Joyce Chow moderating and Tom and a few other folks. So and we'll save the questions for that panel. But let's give it up for Charlie Shrem.
Thank you so much.
You can stay here, and I'll go to.